Is it ready? We're going to continue the public meeting, the planning board meeting of June 11, 2019. Just so everybody knows, we were in executive session, and we will be out. We're going to take attendance. Member Arena? Here. Member Downey? Here. Member Kami? Here. Member Joyce?
Present.
And myself, present. The first matter on the agenda is 60 Columbian Street, file 19-06. Just to disclose, as chairman, I'm recusing myself. There will be 4 members sitting on this. There is a 5th who is not here who will be able to participate under the Mullen Rule, just so everybody knows. But at this point, I will be recusing myself.
Good evening, everyone. We will be opening our hearing for 60 Columbian Street, file number 19-06, site plan review for Brigham and Women's Hospital, who is our applicant. I'm going to read into record the public notice. Notice is given by the Planning Board under the provisions of MGL Chapter 48, Section 11, and the Braintree Zoning Ordinance Chapter 135, Articles 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, and 14, that a public hearing will be conducted on Tuesday, June 11th, 2019 at 7:15 p.m. in the Braintree Town Hall. The Planning Board will consider an application for site plan review by the applicant, Brigham and Women's Hospital. The applicant is seeking permission to demolish a portion of the existing office/warehouse building and to repurpose the remaining 91,000 square feet building for medical center/clinic, along with associated drainage, landscaping, parking, circulation, and lighting site improvements. This property is 9.981 acres, has an address of 60 Columbian Street, is zoned highway business, and is identified on Assessor's Plan 1112 as Plot 22D. The proposal may be reviewed at the Department of Planning and Community Development at 1 JFK Memorial Drive, which is Town Hall, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. With that, I'll open it up to the applicant for a project presentation. Yeah, just make sure you speak into the microphone.
Just slide right out from the top.
Pull out towards you. And then the video recording for the screen is coming from that camera over there,
Okay.
so if you're in between them.
I'm going to step over here.
Sure,
you
that's
can
fine.
use my name is Mark Clayton. I work for CBRE, and I am the owner's representative for Brigham Health. We are excited to be here tonight. And on behalf of Brigham Health and in the town of Braintree, they're extremely excited about this project. We've been working on it for over a year and a half, putting the pieces together. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about the building. If you don't know, I know more about it than I care to admit at this point, but the building was built, the 2-story building, which is the front building, was built in 1986, and in let me get the dates right. In 1994, the developer actually signed a lease with the lottery, and they built the warehouse in the back, and the lottery has been in the building since that 1994. As you all are aware, the lottery is leaving the building. Brigham looked at a number of buildings on the South Shore, and this building, for a number of reasons, including the location, Braintree, the departments that are going to go into the building. It's a consolidation of really a lot of departments that are in the neighborhoods in Braintree and in Weymouth, consolidating into the site. So if I go to the next slide, please. Thanks, Lisa. This is an aerial of what the building will look like when it's complete. The 2-story building will stay in place, and if you see this little dotted line, it's actually the warehouse that will be torn down. It gives us a great circulation for parking. Actually, the ratio will be met on the site, and I'll let the VHB, who's our civil engineer, go into all the parking ratios. but the flow that's on this now and the circulation, this will actually be the entrance to the building, and really with the volume of the parking for the patients in the front entrance of the building. Great access coming in and then flowing into the building. The rear will be used as an urgent care, and that will be open beyond just the normal 5.5 days of business. So this is just a summary of what is going into the building and our schedule right now. Brigham Health is the proponent. It's a community of care under one roof is the term that's used by Brigham. And it really is a consolidation of a number of the departments that are part of Brigham and Women's that are consolidating into what will be a 90,000 square foot, 2-story building. Some of the groups that will be going in, primary care, urgent care I mentioned. We have multiple specialties, lab services, imaging, cardiology, surgical consult, and then endo suite is going to be in the building. Our timing is we hope to start construction in the fall of 2019. Construction would be complete in the fall of 2020, and we hope to open in the winter, really in the first quarter of 2021. And with that, I'm going to, one more slide, Lisa. This is a artist rendering, and I'm going to let the architect is going to address a number of renderings of the building, but this was what the entrance will look like, we hope, when the project is complete. And this is actually where the warehouse is now, this opening right here. And it really will give a great vista for patients that are arriving, a lot of parking, a lot of room for patients to come and go throughout the building with employee parking on both sides of the building. With that, I'll turn it over to VHB, and they can get into some of the more technical details of the site.
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. My name is Lisa Chow with VHB, the civil engineer for the project. As Mark described, the proposal is to renovate and repurpose the site from an existing office and warehouse use to a medical office building use. This would be the third generation of use for the existing office building. The proposed medical office building is a use by right within the Highway Business District. The reason why we're here today before you is because the site plan approval for the existing office and warehouse require the proponent to come back before the planning board for a site plan review process if there is a proposed change in use. I'd like to provide a quick overview of the existing site and then discuss the proposed improvements. Can you go back forward? The site before you is obviously developed, as Mark mentioned. It consists of a 2-story office building with a 1-story warehouse building. It is currently the site for the Massachusetts State Lottery building, and the Massachusetts State Lottery uses both the warehouse and the office building. Access to the site is from east and westbound on Columbian Street through the signalized shared access drive. There are 4 curb cuts currently that will access the site. Under existing conditions, the runoff from the building roof is discharged to the north wetlands and the west wetlands via existing building roofs that are connected to storm drain pipes. Runoff from this portion of the site is sheet flows into existing catch basins untreated and then discharged to the north wetlands. Site runoff from this portion of the site, sheet flows to existing catch basins untreated and discharges to the west wetlands. Site runoff from this portion of the site, sheet flows towards catch basins untreated and is discharged into the existing 24-inch RCP within the drainage easement to the south of the site. There is a small stretch of pervious land that is undeveloped that is naturally sloping towards the east, and that will remain as is. So the project involves the renovation of the existing two-story building, as mentioned. Can you go back one? Renovation of the existing two-story building to become a medical office building and the demolition of the one-story warehouse building. The warehouse building is getting demolished, as Mark mentioned, to create additional parking to meet the parking requirements for a medical office building use. Per the current Braintree zoning code, a medical office building use requires 6.67 spaces per 1,000 square feet. The applicant and Brigham would like to propose a ratio of 6 spaces per 1,000 square foot. We can discuss that further. Under that plan, 540 parking spaces would be constructed and 61 would be put in reserve parking. In addition to parking improvements, the project is also proposing drainage improvements, landscape improvements, and lighting improvements. The original submission for the site plan review package included proposed infiltration systems to reduce peak flow rates as part of the stormwater management plan. Since the package was submitted, additional soil exploratory work was completed, and based on the findings from the soil exploratory work, we had to change the proposed stormwater management approach. Instead of infiltration systems, it would become detention systems due to shallow bedrock and groundwater that was encountered. In addition to the detention system, water quality units as well as deep sump hooded catch basins are proposed to address water quality, excuse me. There are also new trees and shrubs being proposed as part of this project. A number of the trees, particularly along the east edge of the site, is being proposed to conform with the 1994 site plan approval at the request of the planning board staff. A mixture of native, hybrid, and non-native trees are being proposed. The proposed site plan will be an enhancement to what's currently there today. Appropriate erosion and sedimentation control measures are also being proposed during construction. These measures include a construction fence as well as straw wattle around the limit of work and a wheel wash at the construction entrance and exit, as well as silt sacks silt sacks at catch basins. A long-term pollution prevention plan to address maintenance objectives once construction is completed was also included in the package that was submitted to the planning board. Are there any questions related to site right now?
I think maybe we'll let the overall project develop, the project, we'll go through, I guess, from an overall perspective, and then we'll try to ask specific questions, if that's all right.
Okay, and I also wanted to let you know that our traffic engineer is also here tonight if there are any traffic-related
Great.
questions.
Perfect.
Good evening. My name is Brian McKenna, and I represent the architecture, engineering, design firm Canon Design for this project. As Lisa walked through the site, and as Mark pointed, if you were looking at this image, this is more of the internal planning and focus on the elevations. So the loop road is here. The former warehouse is at the bottom of the screen as an orientation. So quite simply, our main entrance is where the warehouse was, and our urgent care entrance is where the existing entrance to the building is now. So we've located urgent care up top as it's coming in with clinical programs on both sides of a main connecting corridor. We're showing existing photos of the building because, quite frankly, we're keeping majority of the building. This is the corner as you arrive now with the north corner with the entrance up to the right, and you go along the building, which is the next visual to the right here I'm pointing at, that wraps you around. You can see a hint of the warehouse in the back. It's a brick building with punched windows. We've done the survey. The windows are in fairly good condition. The brick feels like it's in good condition. So at present, we are going to keep the envelope of this building. You'll see consistency around the sides of the building of the brick and the banding. Black and white line rendering. So if you were looking at this portion in the middle is what represents where the warehouse was. We're basically taking the portion where the warehouse was taken down and filling that in with our new main entrance to get a new attraction and a hierarchy to the building. Remainder of the building is remaining. We may cover, you'll see in the renderings, we're talking about coating the banding to get a little more monolithic color to the building. And on the existing, I'll call this the west elevation, but where you would arrive to the building, that's the existing entrance, and we're just extending it up to connect the two ends of the building. On the north and south, the building is remaining pretty much as is. We've indicated canopies at now what we're calling a staff entrance for a little more shelter to come in and to connect some of the architectural around. This is the rendering of the west entry, which would be the existing lottery entry. So we're repurposing that for our secondary entrance for urgent care, which, as you saw in the site plan, it worked out well in the sense that this building, unless you're a really lucky person, you didn't come here much as a as the public, but it was very staff heavy with the trucks and the delivery and everything. When we flip that around for MOB and healthcare, we have our patients with majority of the parking and a little less on the urgent care side. So it worked out well in that orientation. And the last image you saw earlier is the main entrance where we fill in the portion of the building where the warehouse was. Our intent is to stay in the same hue as the brick and start to bring some warm colors in and some glazing to bring light into the building. Are there any questions?
It's actually not the end of the presentation.
That was going to be my question.
My name is David Bone. I am with VHB, and I thank you for the opportunity to present our traffic study to you tonight. So thank you, members of the board and town staff. I will be brief. I will attempt to be brief and just spend a few minutes telling you what we did and a couple of the key findings, and then I can, if there are questions, I'm happy to dive into the details later during the next portion of the meeting. First of all, we were prepared a traffic impact study looking at the redevelopment of this site. The use has changed and the pattern has changed. A medical office building has a very different pattern than an office building or an office and warehouse combination building that exists on the site. So the patterns are different, and frankly, there is more traffic that comes along as a result of a medical office building. I think that is clearly stated in our report. What was important is that we identified the existing level of activity generated by the lottery, both when it was busier and in its current stage where it has wound down somewhat. There's still activity there, but it is not as intense as it was before. We met with town staff early on. We had several conversations about what's an appropriate area to evaluate, and we selected about a 1 mile long section of Columbian Street that includes 4 intersections, starting at the north at Liberty and Grove, Grove and Columbian at the site access road, the existing signalized intersection, and then Forest Street at Columbian, which is actually in Weymouth, not in Braintree. We did a pretty extensive data collection effort. We counted traffic at each one of those intersections, morning, afternoon, and Saturday peak periods, trying to comply with your zoning requirements for a traffic study. I think we've done that. So we counted traffic. We also put out some 24-hour, actually 48-hour traffic counters, both on the site access road and on Columbian Street. So there's a lot of data in the report. Columbian Street carries about 19,000 cars a day right now. It's a pretty busy roadway that is under MassDOT jurisdiction, which is another key point. They also have the opportunity to review this project through their own process. We've had an initial meeting with them as well, and I think the conclusion was they look forward to seeing the study. We've shared the same report that you have in front of you with them, and they're in the process of taking a look at it as well. In addition to counting traffic, we were also looking at pedestrian activity, bicycle activity. We looked at safety, crash information. We looked at speed information on the roadway, both what's posted and what we're seeing for the speeds that people are traveling at. So again, there's a lot of information. It's all the existing conditions. Next step in the process is to understand what happens, what's likely to happen over a 7-year period with other developments that have already been approved in the town as well as outside of the town. And we've incorporated the effects of background development, as we call it, and the Union Point project, which is a couple of miles further east southeast of this particular site. And again, described how we did that in our report, so happy to answer questions about that. Next step in the process, estimate how much traffic the project would generate. And again, I'd point out that we compared the existing use of the building with the proposed medical office building. There's a lot of information both on the peak hour and daily basis about how the differences identify themselves between the different uses. I won't go into much more than that on the numbers. We did look at origin destination information for patients that are served by Brigham Health in this community and in Weymouth to understand where they're coming from, what the travel patterns are. And again, that's documented in the traffic study. I think I mentioned this, but it really is important that we consider and not double count the activity that the lottery was generating at the time we did our counts. Volumes were much lower than when the building was at full occupancy, but we've taken that into account, and again, we've described how we've done that. The meat of the report is an analysis section. We've looked at those 4 intersections that I mentioned before. We've analyzed the operations of those intersections. For the most part, the site access driveway works very well. It's a signalized intersection. There's plenty of lanes. There's plenty of capacity at the intersection there. We also have identified at Columbian and Grove that the intersection works okay. We can make it work better through some signal timing changes. And there are also information on the other 2 intersections, which I will not go into great detail on. But the greatest impact, the greatest effect of the project is felt right at the front door where the site access road comes into Columbian Street, and it works really well. We call it level of service A in our terminology. We've also, at the town's request, done some queuing studies, trying to understand what the lengths of queues are between the site access road and Grove Street along Columbian to make sure that the operations will work. And we've calculated the traffic threshold, the requirement that you have. Where do we stand in that threshold measurement? In this case, we've estimated, depending on which side of the site access road you're on, you have either I think this is 6.9% increase in traffic versus a 9.5% increase in traffic on the north side of the site. So as you come out of the driveway, if I'm not being clear, if you come out of the driveway, turn left, the traffic is up about 9%, 9.5% over existing conditions. And if you go to the right, as you come out of the site and go south, it's about 6.5%. I think the last thing I wanted to mention was we've had some initial ideas about mitigation. What could we do? What could Brigham and Women's do to help make this site work better and reduce the traffic impacts? I think cycling is important. It's a growing trend. We want to accommodate cyclists that choose to ride their bikes here. It's going to probably be predominantly employees as opposed to patients and, because of their physical condition, but there'll be accommodations on the site with bike racks, with shower and locker facilities, and a place to change to make it convenient and comfortable. Also looking at the use of electric vehicle charging stations on the site, much like you have out in your own parking lot right here. And we're also looking at, as I said, signal timing changes, signal timing improvements at least one of the intersections to bring the operations back to a better level of service and shorter delays for drivers. So that's really the highlights, and I'll be done for now, and I'm happy to answer questions as we go forward.
Thank you.
I think that's probably the end of the presentation.
Okay, great, thank you. Because this is a public hearing, I'll just maybe start off with seeing if there's anybody here from the public who wants to ask any questions of the applicant or has any comments. And if there's no one from the public, we'll move on. If anybody has any questions from the public moving forward, just feel free to come up during the continued hearing. I think at this point, I'd like to ask staff if they could just kind of give us an overview of where we're at as kind of an overall update, and then we can move into further questions
Sure,
from the
thank
board.
you, Madam Chair. So I think the presenters sort of touched on some of the issues. I have prepared a staff report for the board. It's also been shared with the applicant. There was a few comments to things to be clarified. Basically, it's a adaptive sort of reuse with doing some upgrades to some of the features of the site that are a little bit older, the drainage system. They're proposing to upgrade the water quality of the stormwater discharge leaving the site, And they're also proposing we tried for infiltration, as Lisa Chow had mentioned, the geotechnical report, which was emailed to all of the board members. Unfortunately, there's only one system that they can actually design and model and meet the specifications for infiltration in the stormwater regulations, and the other two systems will become detention systems. There is no increase in pervious coverage on the site, but just like several of our other projects, this is an opportunity to kind of look at what's working good and what can be improved upon. Second item that will be greatly improved upon, that was also mentioned, is the landscaping. Trying to bring the site back into compliance and also supplement some additional shrubbery and perennials and things like that. There'll be a lot more people from the public coming to the site, given the use of the site and different people on and off the site from day to day, visiting practitioners and the urgent care facility as well. The ADA improvements and accessibility will all be, I should say, the new ADA parking spaces and access to the building will all be 100% ADA compliant. There's also an extensive lighting plan that was shared with the planning board, photometrics, to include some additional pole lights, some wall packs, and some sort of, I'll call it like entry lighting. I think they even had some sort of lit bollards around the main entrance and the front and the rear. The orientation of the site is a little bit quirky. The majority of the things that are still sort of left for the staff to work on, and I've been working with David Torres, who's the town's traffic engineer, and we'll be setting up a meeting hopefully next week with Dave Bone, who just did his presentation, to really sort of drill down on what we're going to be recommending for mitigation package here. The volumes are significant, as mentioned, and also as provided for in the summary that was shared with the planning board. And we want to make sure that the mitigation package is appropriate, is going to deal with the impacts from the increase in chip generation. And something else that we're looking at is pedestrian access as well, and what can be improved upon. I think there was one thing in the staff report, there's a sort of a sidewalk that's along the, I guess it would be the north side of the access drive, and sort of creating, a sign and some striping and things like that, so the people that are walking can get over to this side of the site safely. They are crossing, 2 lanes, and there's a median in the middle, and the orientation of the roadway has some interesting angles and curves. So just sort of things to sort of modernize the site and dress it up. They're obviously dressing up the building quite a bit, and we'd like the site and the access and the other features that support the site to also sort of be at that same level. So I would be, if any of the board members this evening have anything that they'd like to share or would like me to look at in detail in regards to traffic mitigation, if they're aware of something in the corridor, if they've heard from some residents that can be shared tonight, or any of the members can follow up with the staff. And like I said, myself and David Suarez will be sitting down and sort of going over some more technical questions that we may have and that he may have, and then hopefully at the next public hearing we would be able to present our recommendations in regards to the traffic mitigation. We're just not quite there yet.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Member Downey, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do. I'd like to talk to the traffic engineer. Is it Dave? Sorry. Just about what Melissa was just talking about in the site access road. It looks like there's a signal light at the end of it on Columbian Street. Is that
Yes.
currently there's one there?
Currently signalized, yes.
Okay. Is there a
Well-
crosswalk there?
There are bits and pieces of sidewalk. There are places where there is no sidewalk.
Crosswalk. Is there any way you can cross there from one side of the street to the other?
I don't recall if there's a marked crosswalk. I don't recall.
And are there bike lanes down there yet?
No.
No. So the next signal would be at Grove. I was looking at Google Maps, just trying to get a feel for the streets. The next light going into Braintree would be at Grove
Grove at Columbian.
Columbian, okay, and then the next one would be at Liberty Street, is that,
Yeah,
okay. Ah, very good.
yeah, there are several figures in the back part of the traffic study that show the area.
And the numbers you cited, you said 6.5 and 9.5, depending on which way you turn.
Let me,
Where would I find that?
I'll give you the exact numbers because I was doing it from memory. It's 9.4% north
Okay,
of the site access road, and it's 6.9% south of the site access road in terms of the percent increase in traffic.
so that's going left would be the 9,
Coming out and going left, yes,
Okay.
would be 9.4, and turning right out would be 6.9.
and is that in this study? I don't
It
see
is, it is in the
Where would I
study,
find
yes.
it?
We have a nice little table in there where we've summarized it in the report.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. I didn't see it when I was just going through it. So I guess my only question is, and I was looking at the mitigation section too, and Melissa talked a little bit about it, but does that seem like it's still getting kind of worked over now? I mean, we're not,
Yes, they have, I mean, we had a preliminary meeting before that they filed. We originally reached out to engineering and, Bob Campbell and David Torres on our side, and DPW engineer, town engineer, and traffic engineer so they confirmed with us the parameters of the study. That was acceptable. And then we met again to talk about a couple different things. They're proposing some things, and we've already kind of floated a few ideas with them, primarily the intersection at Liberty and Grove. We have a full design for that intersection already. It was a mitigation package from another development, and that's something that we're going to be looking at. Columbian and Grove as well, it will be impacted. We're really going to try to, as we do with most projects, is get as close to possible as we can to maintaining the current level of service. That is, the goal, and getting as close to that. There are impacts, obviously, in the peak hour, and I think, and I don't want to speak for the traffic engineer, but it's a different characteristic. It's a high volume of daily trips, but it's kind of constant. Everyone's coming to appointments all day versus an office building where everybody shows up at 8, leaves for lunch sometimes between 11 and 1, and then leaves at the end of the day. So while there will be an influx in the morning of obviously the employees, there will be continuous volume throughout the course of the day. They are open 7:30 to 7 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 7:30 to 5 on Friday, and then they will have limited hours on Saturday, I would guess, the urgent care. And I know that some of these facilities do some different imaging, mammograms, x-rays, those types of things as well. So we're looking at this very diligently, and we've expressed to them that we need to put our best, everyone needs to put their best foot forward here to make sure that the impacts are not far-reaching and frankly are not impacting people. Hence the Q analysis, the gap analysis. We've asked them to look at a lot of different things to make sure that, things aren't backing up more and more and more and more, and the best way to keep those additional trips moving through the corridor.
I would agree with everything you said, the way you described the process about the mitigation ideas are definitely, they've been floated, and we look forward to that next meeting to have a conversation to get a little bit more specific about what the town is really prefers to do and would like to have us consider. And the second point about the coming and going over the course of the day, it's very typical of a medical office building. Many of the people that would come to this site will have a very short stay. They might only be here for 15 minutes, half an hour. They have their appointment, they see their doctor, they see their practitioner, and they leave. And the traffic impacts are spread out over the course of the day. It's a fairly steady level of activity over the course of the day. Morning and afternoon peaks are when your employees arrive or depart, and because this building is on a schedule, you will see the concentration of those employees during those 2 hours at the beginning of the day and the end of the day.
yeah, I just will have one final comment. I don't have any more questions, but if you've ever watched public access, the recurring theme seems to be that this board's responsible for all the traffic in Braintree. I drive in this town. I don't want to be in traffic either, so, I just urge you to work with the staff, please, to make sure that any increase is mitigated.
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Did you have any?
Nothing
other
else, no.
comments? I think I'd like to stay on the topic of traffic with the rest of the board members, so I'll just go through and see if anybody else has any further questions. Member Arena, regarding traffic, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
No questions.
All right, Member McCamey?
Sure.
I think I'd like in writing that people, when they show up, they're only going to be there 15 or 30 minutes. If you can guarantee that, we'll look at it more favorably. So
I wish I could guarantee.
I wrote that down. Okay.
I said some.
Okay. So look, people who live in Braintree think that all the traffic in the world is in Braintree, and so to echo Member Downey and the assistant director there, we have to pay attention. You have to pay attention. You know, we're not just looking at that one exit out of Columbian. We're looking how it waterfalls throughout the town, into Weymouth, the major roadways. You know, you've done some of that work. It's a dead horse. I'm gonna beat it, because we've had major projects. I'll just mention Amazon, for example. That's still not done. Your traffic volume looks to rival theirs. That's concerning, because that's in a different part of town, and all of a sudden now we got another potential Amazon traffic situation in a different portion of town, and on top of what we already have. So we cannot, you cannot impact the traffic in this town, as Melissa said, any worse than it is today. If it does, it's a failure, and we will have to make adjustments. And I know that sounds difficult, but I'm sorry. We as Member Downey said, you know, we're a desirable area for many reasons. We have to protect everyone. You know, for example, I see that you put some stuff in there about the school buses. Absolutely critical. We get those kids to school. So I guess, you know, we're going to talk more about it, but I just wanted to say from all of our standpoints, we're not going to be easy on traffic. And you have to be very creative, think out of the box. Maybe you have to change the way, you know, your scheduling is. I don't know. We've been asking other people to do the same thing. And it's not just simply your, you know, numbers from some book coming through. It's the actual performance that we're worried about. It has nothing to do with the lottery. That's totally different. Okay? So think creatively, be open. You know, other people are going to be making adjustments. They're having traffic wardens, if you will. We're going to do continuing traffic studies. We'll probably have you participate in that. And again, it is a dead horse, but we have to beat it, because it is the #1 issue for the quality of life of everyone here in Braintree and everybody working in Braintree, and that would like to come. So I hope you hear me on that, because we're going to tell you about 100 more times. Okay, thank you. And my other comment is, what is the tax status of this project? Is this a taxable entity, or is it a tax-exempt entity, or some sort of mixed use?
Good evening. I'm Ronald Ruth, lawyer with Sharon and Lodgen in Boston on behalf of the project. In terms of the project proponent is a nonprofit, exempt from taxes, but anxious and already engaged in discussions with the town, city, with regard to a pilot.
Okay.
Payment in lieu of taxes agreement.
No, I appreciate that, and again, you know, everything costs more, as you know, the infrastructure, the public safety. I'm sure your client understands that, so I appreciate, I'm sure you're discussing with the mayor, but since we're televised, you know, I think it's good for everybody to hear that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Right, I have a few additional questions related to traffic and traffic. With regards to the signalized intersection at the site access road, where the site access roadway comes down to Columbian Street, the detector for the signal time, how is that signal set up? Is it like a loop detector? Is it video? How does the
I think
existing
it's an
signal work?
older system that probably goes back to the mid-'90s or even late '80s when the site was installed. I'm not exactly sure when it was installed, but it is, it's not, current design. It's functioning fine, but it's not current design.
And were there any proposed improvements to that signal as part of this
We
work?
did not propose anything specifically for that location. The operations are actually at level of service A, and it's very much driven by the lane configuration that's there. We have a 2-lane exit on the site access road intersecting a 4-lane roadway. It is that one spot on the corridor where there is more capacity than any of the other locations.
Okay.
So we've not spent a lot of time on the details of the signal design and signal operation. I imagine that I'm going to hear some of that next week when we have a conversation with town staff.
Okay. We had a similar project that we had looked at somewhat recently where it was loop detectors and they changed it to the video and they had found it, improved it. I'm not suggesting that that's part of it. I was just curious what the existing configuration was. And you had mentioned that the Columbian Road is a state route, so they would also be reviewing it. And I was wondering if you might be able to share any sort of timing on their review or anything you might anticipate that the state would be looking for as far as how this project is impacting their roadway?
So we have had an initial consultation meeting with them. It was an informal conversation. No major concerns were raised at that particular meeting. They made no decisions either. They said, we look forward to receiving the study. We'll take a look at it and we will offer our opinion at the appropriate point in the process. We will be subject to the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, the MEPA process, and a MEPA filing will be happening imminently within a matter of it may be, is it this week or by the 15th? By the 14th of June. So there's 2 filing deadlines a month. It will be filed this week and be advertised in the Environmental Monitor, and starts that notification process as well. And the town will be notified again that there's an opportunity to participate in that.
So the trigger for the MEPA filing is
Because of the traffic threshold,
Okay.
because of the number of trips and the number of parking spaces. This is an interesting one because it's an existing use. And in fact, the building is being made physically smaller. But we are required to obtain an access permit from Mass DOT.
All right.
And that's their trigger.
If I can just ask for a clarification from staff, Melissa, does the MEPA filing and stuff, how does that play into what we're doing as far
So,
as?
and that was, they had touched on that when we had met with them before, and then when I was doing some research and looking back at the old files, there was a MEPA filing for when this was all done, and it was Mass Highway at the time. They issued some findings, and there was mitigation and improvements, and I'm assuming it was the driveway and the signal, and this is like 85 and then 94. So my question to Mr. Bone is are you going in to amend those findings, or are you doing like a new ENF?
We're filing a new ENF.
A new ENF, okay,
Environmental notification form.
okay. So that was just my clarification. So we get the, we get the ENF as part of the process. That document, I'm guessing, is the same document that we're already reviewing. So we would be sort of trying to make that process whole and working with VHB, having our town staff, Bob Campbell, and our traffic engineer talking to District 6 if needed, making sure that their concerns are, everybody's concerns are equally addressed and equally weighted, assuming they would be some of the same concerns. I mean, there's only so many concerns you can have in a roadway with these types of volumes, but we would want to make sure that that's all sort of intercoordinated and making sure that, as things move there, they're looking for some, we're looking, whatever, and again, it is a state road. So any work in that corridor would be subject to Mass DOT approval.
All right, great.
And that's District 6.
District 6. And we actually provided them a courtesy copy of the traffic study that you're reviewing, and the environmental notification form also includes a copy of the same study, so they're seeing all of the same information that the town of Braintree is
Okay,
receiving.
great. A follow-up question with regards to kind of interagency reviews. Given the proximity of this project to the town of Weymouth, does the town of Weymouth participate in any sort of discussion, or are they aware of the project?
So they'll, Weymouth will get the ENF. I'm also going to be reaching out to their traffic engineer. I just want to give our traffic engineer enough time so that he's sort of comfortable with his review. And then they'll be able to comment, as will, several other groups, on the ENF. But again, we'd like to, coordinate that. My understanding is, and I think it was in here, that Forestry's getting a temporary signal.
That's what we've been told, yes.
I mean, I don't know, I'm guessing it might become a permanent one, I don't know, but, so there are some other things that are in flux because of Union Point. Some of that material's in the report. They've tried to do a good job at sort of projecting out, X amount of trips based on X amount of projects. We're putting a traffic study. As we all know, that's not going at the rate in which they anticipated, and when those things will be fully operational and when those volumes and trips will be in the network is kind of a guess at this point, but it's part of the future analysis,
Okay.
the no build and the build.
Okay. And then you had mentioned, Member Downey had just touched on the increase of vehicles exiting the site and taking a left, and then they'll be coming up to that intersection with Grove Street. Do you have any sort of guesstimate as what percentage is going to be going towards Weymouth and what percentage will be continuing towards Braintree?
In fact, I do.
Great.
Give me 1 second to get to it. There it is. This is our trip distribution pattern. It's in the report. But our expectation, let's start with somebody turning left out of the site today, and we'll talk about exiting. The entering traffic is the same. It's just the reverse movement. 58% of the traffic coming out of the site would be turning left. 58% would be turning right to come in. Again, that's based on patient origin destination information, where do people live and where they likely to be coming from. As they get to the Grove Street intersection, we think that the bulk of the traffic is going to turn right and head out towards Route 18 and Route 3. And about 9% up Grove Street. Again, these are estimates, they're our best estimates, but 9% up Grove, towards Liberty, and 47% over to the right, over to the east to Route 18 and Route 3. In the opposite direction, coming out of the site and turning right, 42% of the traffic would turn right out of the site. And when it gets to Forest Street, it would split. We think about 9% of the traffic would head down Forest Street into Weymouth, and the remaining 33% would continue on down Columbian.
Okay, that's great.
And again, it's all in the report.
All right. And then I'd just like to touch on, since I know we'll be working on potential mitigation, the sidewalk situation out on that site and on Columbia Road. I noticed a figure in your report that had a 500-foot radius, and it shown some blue lines indicating sidewalks and streetlights. Is this figure that you prepared, is that representative of all the sidewalks in the vicinity? Because it looks like there's a sidewalk on the north side of your access road, but then there's really nothing on Columbian as far as sidewalks. And I want to say, having run in those areas, there really is not much protection for a pedestrian on Columbian or at Grove.
It's very limited. There is a sidewalk along a portion of the site access road from Columbian into the site. Comes pretty much up to the where the major part of the building starts.
Sorry, you just have to take the microphone with you because they're recording. Thank you.
The existing sidewalk along the site runs essentially from Columbian Street to this point here. here. It runs about halfway along the length of the access road, the site access road. It does not intersect sidewalk on Columbian Street.
Yeah, there's no,
And there is, if you look at the graphic, it's figure 2, that 500-foot radius. There are bits and pieces of sidewalk along the south side or the west side of Columbian Street, depending on how you view the map. But there are bits and pieces. It's not a continuous sidewalk along the entire side.
okay. I would just make a request to staff to look at that intersection. Having been a pedestrian at the intersection of Grove Street and Columbian Street, it is pretty hairy. So if it's possible to put that in future plans or whatever is happening.
Are we talking about the site drive, Madam Chair?
We're
or
talking
or
the site
Columbian
drive,
Grove?
the sidewalk on this, there's a sidewalk on the site drive, but it dead ends to nothing.
Right.
On Columbia. And then I'm saying at the intersection of Grove and Columbia, it's
Yes.
very dangerous for a pedestrian. There's a
Yeah.
lot going on, so I don't know.
There's
If as a-
also, I observed like a worn path.
Yeah, that's
So I
how it
think-
is on Grove, like on the side of Grove Street, it's all like worn out, but it's like
Yeah.
sloped. It's just not pedestrian friendly at all.
It looks like people might be on the other side of, maybe they're coming from Grove and over where Jamie's is, that's the restaurant in the triangle, and then they're on that side of the street, and then when the guardrail stops on their side of the street, I think people might
Yes.
jaunt over and then make their way, because you can see the worn path, but there's a point where if you were walking on that side of Columbian, there'd be a point where you'd have to we were driving the other day, we're like, are they walking behind the guardrail? We were trying to understand the pattern, but that's something that we've talked to them about and we're
Yeah.
looking at.
I mean, I think it would be a lost opportunity to have a world-class medical facility without pedestrian access, reasonable pedestrian access from the public way. I mean, essentially, people in the neighborhood who needed to access the site via foot traffic it would be dangerous. So that might not necessarily be just you guys, but if we could look at it holistically, that would be great. I think that's all I had with regards to questions for us. So I don't know if any other board members have other questions regarding the site or drainage or anything like that. I can keep going. Do you have anything? No. All right. I have a couple questions just regarding the drainage updates. So Lisa, if you want to. You had mentioned with the results of the geotechnical investigation that a couple of the systems were changing. Can you just highlight which systems were changing with regards to the infiltration versus detention?
Sure. If you refer to the drainage plan, or grading and drainage plan, there are 3 systems.
Sorry, that projector thing kind of
Oh, okay.
stopped working, so
Okay.
There's a
they
system
set
over
up their
here.
easel.
If you could set up the easel in the general, just so that they can record it, because I think they're still using that same camera. Thank you.
Could you actually put it just in front of where the TV was, if you don't mind? Thank you.
You can keep it closer, like right there is perfect. Yeah, that's.
Yep.
There you go, perfect, great.
So there were 3 proposed systems, one located here and one located here, as well as one here. These 2 the test pits encounter shallow groundwater and bedrock, so these 2 are being changed to detention, and this one will remain as a infiltration system.
All right, and then you had mentioned in your presentation with regards to parking spaces going into reserve and the idea of the zoning bylaw requiring 6.67 and you suggesting 6 may be more appropriate with spaces in reserve, and I was just curious where those reserve spaces are shown and how that would work. What would be the idea behind the initial and then the build out of those spaces?
So we did include a slide in the presentation, but we can circulate the exhibit to Melissa as well. So if you look on the plan sheet C102, there are proposed parking pavement lines that are dashed, and the circle is also dashed. So the reserved parking are located up in this area, in the dashed lines. Here, 4 spaces here, and as well as reserved parking in this area, and this area. The plan is these reserved parking areas equal the 61 proposed reserved parking spaces. So the plan is that these would not be built, and what's there existing will remain as is. This portion will shrink. The island will move essentially 2 parking spaces over, and then we would provide the 24-foot drive aisle so that they could circulate in this area.
Okay, I think that was the hard part I was envisioning, like I could see where they wouldn't build those, but I was wondering what the interim configuration would be of the parking at the entrance if you weren't building the reserve.
Yep. So we will have a updated exhibit that we can share with the planning board, but that was the plan. We would shift this island to the north and provide that 24-foot drive aisle.
All right. And the existing site does not have any existing stormwater management facilities? There's no stormwater
there is.
management? Oh, there is?
Yeah, it's just catch basins, a roof drain system, and then it discharges to the wetland area that's when you come in the access drive to the left.
All right, so
which
just
is
a
like their
collection.
frontage, kind of.
Just a collection system?
Yep.
So there are, as Melissa mentioned, as I mentioned, there are 4 drainage points that the site is currently discharging to, and we're essentially in the proposed condition maintaining that drainage pattern for the most part.
Okay. And then it seems like most of the site drainage is going to remain, and you're kind of just adding.
That's correct. In the areas that are being disturbed, the pavement area that are being disturbed, that's where we're proposing the deep sump catch basins, the water quality units, and the detention/infiltration systems. Everywhere else that will remain as is not being touched.
Okay, I think from a stormwater perspective, I am good. With regards to estimates for additional sewage generation and water consumption from the site, I noted in the report that it was 11,000 gallon per day additional discharge to the sewer system. If I can just ask staff, has there been any discussion with the water and sewer department with regards to the increase in discharge or use of water? Has there been any concerns or anything like that?
We submitted the application to DPW, and the only comments we received to date was from the stormwater manager. So we'll be circling back with the individuals that haven't submitted comments yet, and would ask the applicant to also reach out to the water and sewer department to talk to them about their increase in, I'm sure there's going to be some significant fees, and whether or not there will be any I&I work associated with that as well. I'm not sure exactly what their policies are currently, but I can facilitate that discussion.
Okay, great. Are there any proposed improvements to the fire protection system for the building?
So the design team is looking at the proposed fire protection system, and we will have more information at a later date.
All right. Are there any, I guess, special requirements for a medical building that's out of the norm, or is it just kind of looking at it as an overall update to bring it up to current standards?
So because it is a medical office building, there are, I wouldn't want to say more stringent requirements, but there are different requirements for fire protection.
Is there any proposed improvements for the electrical service or feeds to the building? Any sort of additional generators or any sort of redundancy because it's a medical office?
So
Sure, I'll take that one. Yes, to the fire protection, first off, it would be a gut renovation site because your sprinkler coverage for a warehouse is not the same as a medical office building. As far as the generator, yes, because there's a portion that requires an ambulatory care setting. So there's a generator being proposed for the site, which would be a belly tank of a diesel, because you're required to have a certain amount of 24, 48 hours of uninterrupted fuel source. We've also begun talks with Beld about the transformer that's there now, that is currently where the warehouse is, that is kind of in the way of things, and where it gets relocated to. We've just had those discussions.
Okay. While you're up there, I have a couple of questions on the building. With regards to the urgent care, what type of use is that? Is that like similar urgent care buildings that you see like in neighborhoods,
Yes,
like
it's
in
a
strip
business,
malls, sort
it's
of
a
like?
business occupancy that just sees, it's not 24-hour stay. It is just like your Doctor's Express or one of those
Yep,
ones
okay.
you'd see there.
Would there be the potential for like emergency services bringing patients to a facility like this, or is this more of like
No,
outpatient?
It'd be going out.
Yeah,
Since majority of the building is business occupancy, it'd be 911, so call and go out. We have in some of our thinking thought about how that may happen, because you are a medical building, so if an ambulance would arrive, where would it be, and how do we get that patient out discreetly, safely, without any...
You had mentioned, I think in your presentation, or someone else on the project team had mentioned that this was the consolidation of some alternate locations throughout Braintree and Weymouth, the community of care under one roof, and I was just wondering if you had any sense for like how many different places are kind of moving,
I
just
believe
generally
there are
speaking.
approximately 18 to 20 practices, if you will, that are co-locating to this site.
Are the majority of them in either Braintree or Weymouth, or it's
That I
hard to
don't
say? Okay, just curious.
Nope.
Thank you. There was, I think in some of the existing pictures, the existing building has kind of a cupola structure, and I think in one of the renditions, it looked like there might have been an elevation of something above like the main building, but not on all of them. So I was just kind of wondering from an exterior perspective, are you adding height to the existing building?
So what you saw in the existing buildings, there are some skylight domes above some of the stairs. As we reconfigure the stairs for egress requirements, our intention is to get rid of those. Also, as a warehouse as it is, there's a lot of smaller incremental units, HVAC units that cover this roof. As a medical office building, we'd look to consolidate those for efficiencies and energy, benefits to have so that image you see in the middle is the intended area where the mechanical systems would be, with a screen around it so as not to be visually unappealing.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I
Yes.
just, that was a good point that you raised about there are several practitioners in Weymouth and Braintree, and I think I'm going to follow up and have them provide us with those, because if there's a facility in Braintree that's going to be relocating, while it's not the same exact location, that's already a trip that's sort of in the street network, and that's something that, if there's out of these 18 or 20 practitioners, if 10 of them are in Braintree and so I think that's important to the board to kind of understand what's going away and what will be consolidated here, and if they can provide that information, I think it would be helpful as just sort of a redistribution of a vehicle within the community.
I think that was all that I had for now. Thank you, everyone. I don't know, just real quick, if any other board members had anything they'd want to add. Is there anybody from the public who changed their mind and wants to come up? No. So it sounds like there's still a number of things we're working through. A lot of great information was presented tonight. I think it's an exciting project. I think it's a great use for that space that's being left by the lottery. So, I look forward to seeing where this project ends up. I think with that, we'd be looking to continue this to the next meeting. Which meeting would that be?
The next meeting would be July 9th at 7:15. We have, I think we can continue it to July 9th, and depending on where we are before that meeting,
How does that meeting is also the continuance for our zoning stuff, right? So I don't, is that meeting still,
That
there's
meeting is
still good
available
space,
for,
still available space in that?
yeah, this would probably be the last, well, that's not continued yet, is it? For them. And these aren't either, so, yeah, there's room. There's other hearings tonight that might go to August.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to continue this project to the July 9th meeting
Yes, Madam Chair.
at 7:15. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. See you in July.
I know. Thanks. No problem.
Did you take the little thing off?
Is the chairman coming back?
Christine.
Christine, can you come here for 1 second?
Who would ever take your pen?
Yeah, sure you would. All right, thank you. With regards to Allen Street, Chair will entertain a motion to continue this to another date.
So moved.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is 144, correct?
Yes.
Is Attorney Palmucci?
No, he's not. He asked me to ask the board.
Oh,
to
okay.
continue. Yes.
What I was just discussing with the director and our planner was the July 9th meeting. And we have a preliminary subdivision that came in for Sitco on that night. We have the comprehensive rezone, and we already continued 20 Trefton, and we just continued Brigham and Women. So just so the board knows what we have on already that evening, and then what the board would want to do with the rest of the hearings that are going to be continued.
All right. On this one, I did speak to him. He did ask for the July date.
Okay?
So you made a motion to continue?
I did until
Is there a
July.
second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next matter on the agenda will be the,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, is he gone?
yes, he
Okay,
is. he
we'll have
is.
him come and sign tomorrow
Yeah.
before we file the form. Thank you.
236, 240 Wood Road. You're up next?
Pearl Street?
Oh, Pearl Street? Oh, Pearl Street, I apologize. I missed that one. How could I miss it? It's McDonald's. Sure.
Good evening. My name is Jim Cranston. I'm with Bowler Engineering. We were here back in March to present the remodel project. We have since gone back to the drawing board, and we've addressed all or most of the comments that were given that night. I'd like to just briefly go over what those changes were. The first item was addressing the non-compliance with the impervious site area. We've brought that into compliance by adding 2 landscape islands literally right in front of the building. Those are now going to be grass, really for ease of maintenance and vehicles opening their doors so they're not stepping into shrubs. Grass is really the best use of that area. The second item related to landscaping was, that was kind of loud and clear. You wanted something more. So we went back to the drawing board on that, added a variety of shrubs at the rear of the building, right around the drive-through features, so it's dressed up a lot. We've also added some plantings in the front of the restaurant, in and around the freestanding sign and where the new accessible sidewalk connection is. In those 2 areas, those are currently grass today. And then actually Christine asked for some additional plantings over near Washington Street. And we've added some plantings there and actually a tree. So just to summarize the plantings that were added, there's 18 deciduous shrubs, 20 evergreen shrubs, 47 daylilies, just low-lying decorative plants, 35 ornamental grasses, and then a red maple tree over along Washington Street. The other item we've added is to have the contractor restripe the parking areas that were not getting reconfigured. So when the site's done, all of the parking areas will get repainted and touched up. We've already addressed the tree pruning to the rear. They will make that commitment to allow that tree to be pruned at the rear of the lot. And then there was a request for a drive-through stacking study. We did go out there during the lunch hour on a Friday and also on a Saturday. And we prepared an exhibit with a summary of those findings. And over those 2 days, really 13 cars were the maximum quantity counted in the drive-through lane itself. While the exhibit shows that 13 cars can be accommodated on the site, we were finding that cars were not really clustering close enough. There were very large gaps, maybe talking to their kids or talking or whatever. So we think there's a better way to get that to work. So what we proposed is a sign as you enter the site that promotes asking people to pull forward to minimize those gaps. We think that will be helpful. Also, the new drive-through features. The digital menu board does provide a nice summary of your order right on the screen once it's made. It allows someone to read it right away. I think it'll help reduce the amount of errors in orders. That'll speed things up. And also there's that small pre-sell board, which is a half-size menu board right before the actual menu board. So those combined, I think, are definitely going to be a better site operationally. And then the existing entrance drive, we think it's best to leave it the way it is. It allows cars to enter next to drive-through customers so that, basically 2 rows can come in. Helps keep that entry open. So that's really it for the changes and the summary of what we've changed.
Thank you. Anything from the department?
So at the last public hearing, we had a discussion about the appearance of the property. We asked that a representative from McDonald's be present. I know some members had concerns. They have definitely improved the area, particularly this area here. They've done a nice job of adding a tree and a lot of shrubbery. I've given you actual pictures of what the planting material looks like. But I know there had been some questions not only about the landscaping, but about the parking and how that works in that area. So I don't know if you've come with someone tonight that can talk with us and tell the board about that?
Sure. We do have someone tonight with us. They're an area operations supervisor. Kenan Kamzik is with us. If you have any particular questions about that parking lot.
Good evening.
Good evening. Anybody from the board have any questions with regards to the parking lot?
I do. I think I had concerns at the last meeting. So that existing parking area, and I think I noticed like going there in the last week or so, there's like cones across it. Why are the cones across it?
So we have found that that side parking lot is actually being used by businesses around us as well as some tenants. So what we're trying to do in the morning is block off that parking lot area. So when during our peak arrival of the customers, we actually open up the cones so that there's more parking spots available for our customers instead of just being used by general businesses in the area.
The parking configuration, those parallel spaces along Pearl Street, how many are there? Just 3, or is the one on the corner counted as one? Like how?
I believe it's through 3 or 4.
Was there any analysis or like, did we look at a possible reconfiguration of that would work better? Like cars have to like pull in and then back out, and then they have to back out into the queue of cars leaving the drive-through. Like, was there any sort of analysis? Is that the only possible way that can be configured?
So this area, you know, it's not part of the scope of what they look at when they do the improvements for ADA accessibility and pedestrian connections. It works today. I think operationally, if it didn't work, we would be revisiting that. And really, they want to try to maximize the amount of spaces on the site. In order to get that reconfigured, we would certainly lose parking, and I don't think we want to lose any additional parking spaces on the site.
I mean, it kind of sounds like it doesn't work today if you have to put cones up and
Well, that's
back
just
out,
to
but
prevent people that are not McDonald's customers from parking in the parking lot. It's kind of two different things.
I feel like if there's any opportunity that we have to improve that area, this is our chance to do it. So I'm just not sure. I mean, maybe I'm the only one that thinks that's a problem, but it's just odd.
I'm not sure if employees may use that. I would assume they would because they're least desirable for the customers.
Correct.
And
Do employees use any of the other parking, or is it like only employee parking there?
So we've been trying to work with the employees to making sure that they're the ones parking in that parking lot, leaving everything else around the building for the guests. It depends on the shift in the day. Some employees take public transportation to work, so that leaves those spots exposed. That's where other businesses, other customers park there and then walk away and then park there for an hour, 2 hours. So our solution, instead of towing them, was to block it off in the morning. During our peak arrival, we open it up so now our guests can park there.
On this site, is there a problem with lack of parking for McDonald's patrons? You note that you are 7 spaces in excess on the site from a zoning perspective, but from like a use perspective, are you like needing more spaces? Do you have enough? Like if you lost, I'm not saying lose 7 spaces, but just theoretically, if you only had 31, which was required by zoning, would that be detrimental to you?
So if that side parking lot is not used by customers who park and walk away for the rest of the day, we are fine. What happens is, as they leave the cars, they walk away. Now our customers comes, where do I park? What do I do? Drive around the building, and we lose a lot of business because of that. The people that want to come in, they drive off and go somewhere else because there's nowhere to park.
All right, and then I think one of the other things we had talked about last time with regards to the landscaping was there was that tree like tucked into the building in the L. Yeah. We had some notification from a neighbor too about a tree and pruning. Has that all been worked out?
yes, that was the commitment to agree to work with them to allow that tree to be pruned back. We did not want to completely cut the tree down. That's what I mentioned earlier. That is the tree in question. Yep.
Did you speak with him directly? Have you made contact, or just that you're telling us you'll make that commitment?
The construction manager for McDonald's did consult with them directly.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that we communicate with them the timing and phasing of when that happens so that, you know, McDonald's customers aren't impacted, operations, and just for safety. Yep.
Can I ask another question? So, as you were saying, the ADA here, you added the aisle. So you really lost 3 spaces on that side with the addition of the 2 handicap and the aisle.
I was just looking at the parking count. We're maintaining the number of spaces. There's 38 existing, and we have 38 once it's remodeled.
My question is these spaces here, are those, I don't know the terminology, but my order's not ready
Correct.
and I hang out here.
Correct.
And all 3 have to be used for that use?
I think 2 is for that, and then I think 1 is for mobile orders where someone can order online and pick up. So those are dedicated for that because they're closest to that door.
So you're saying the mobile order doesn't go through the queue, it parks here?
Correct.
Okay. Because I think where parking's so tight, it's something to be considered with these here. So you have 2 for the orders that aren't ready and 1 for the mobile?
Yep.
When there's restricted uses to parking spaces, does that impact calculations at all? Like if this space is only used for mobile orders, that sort of thing? Or is it just like a recommended use, but anyone could park there?
Well, I think it's signed that way, right? That it's short-term parking, basically.
Yeah, there is a McDonald's signage that just shows the customer pull forward a mobile order, pull forward here, and we'll bring it out to you.
So in other establishments, eating establishments, we've had the curbside service type of thing going on. And so in those ones, we did limit the number, you know, they tended to expand as it became more popular. I can think of 2 places where we've limited that number because that took away.
Yeah, I'm thinking in terms of like whenever we looked at space changes at the plaza for things that became designated, they looked at their overall count in general. So I was just curious how that applied, if there was a rule of thumb. Yeah, I guess just from that parking area, that awkward parking area, I don't know what the right long-term solution is. I would just hate to see this site renovated and there still be cones at certain times with that access. I don't know if there's a better way for signage or if it's a management plan for the restaurant, but just for sake of what it will look like.
I think one of the bigger issues that we see is the queuing line hanging out into Pearl Street. And so if I heard you correctly, you're having wayfinding signage that encourages the customer to stay tight behind the person in front of them. But how about, is there anything, if I may, in this area here, we have this issue where we have 2 lanes of vehicles coming up to the light. And this, lots of times, there's people just trying to make a left out of here. At other sites, we've talked about hatching that says do not block the driveway, which allows that movement, because if this movement can't come out and make that left, it's queuing up. It's not just the folks that are in line, it's queuing the site.
It's impossible to take a left unless somebody stops and let you go.
Yeah. So I know we've talked about that. That's the only other thing I could think of that might improve to keep that queue moving, but we do have a problem, and it's primarily drivers, you know, just hanging over the 2 or hanging out. I don't know what the answer is to that.
And it doesn't seem like any of the improvements proposed for this is going to change the existing use or use moving forward. It's just kind of updating the styling.
Well, I think moving the ADA spots up is a safer proposal for those occupants getting out of those cars and going across. I can certainly understand why they wanted to do this. And in addition, that is primary plus the walkway down, but they're also giving the whole building a new look and the whole site a new look. I mean, this is part of your transitional with all your facilities nationwide.
Yeah, the architecture upgrades really are the bigger nut with the overall project. Just refresh it, everything.
My overall thought on the boxing out of potential roadway is that that's of benefit to McDonald's and not necessarily to the town, so I would not necessarily
Okay.
recommend something like that, because the queuing on their site is just limiting the amount of customers that can visit them, but potentially blocking out street would potentially limit the flow of traffic, potentially creating issues at the light and stuff. So I don't know if that would necessarily change anything. I would just hope that that parking area could be better managed so that, that it works. And if that's just employee parking only or some better designation, I'd just like to go on the record of noting that, but sorry to, you take over. That's all I had. I didn't have anything further.
Any other members of the board?
One quick question about the tree that was going to be pruned. Christina asked you if you communicated with the owner of that property next to you, and you said yes, is that right?
Yes, the McDonald's regional manager consulted with
Okay,
them.
was he satisfied with that result, that he'd be allowed to prune it?
Yeah, because he was the one that raised the concern of wanting it to be addressed, so he was the one that came forward, asked that this tree be dealt with. It did, a branch landed on his deck or his building in the past, so that is why we've come forward and agreed to work with them.
And he was happy with that resolution?
Yes, because it's addressing his overall concern.
It is, okay. It just seems like if it's your tree.
And he was notified as well, so I don't think he was at the last meeting either.
No, he wasn't, but we don't want,
But we did agree to work with them.
sometimes
It's on the record.
people reappear, you
Yep.
know, when we least expect it, so. Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay.
So, as Member Joyce said, people queuing up to get in, that's a problem. People queuing up to get out, take a left, that's a problem. The floating parking solution, I don't know what that is over there. I've wondered for years what that is. I know what you've tried to describe, I still don't get it. So I guess, Christine, what I would suggest is, do we have enough flexibility so in the conditions we can come back and revisit this? I understand the rebranding, the architecture stuff, but let's face it, there's perpetual traffic issues at that location since it opened. And we just need to stay on top of it. So I think we will have to, just like any other traffic situation, we should have the capability to revisit it and not just simply say, oh, well, that looks nice. It's a problem. You guys are going to have to figure out how you can do it better. Really, I mean, it's some days at lunchtime, it's like, what the heck is going on up there? And crazy drivers, but it's a problem coming in and going out.
So it is a major modification of the original permit, and there were surviving conditions, and this being part of it will pull everything forward, and we can add to that as well. So, we could always ask you to come back in a year or so and revisit, see how the site's working now that you've moved the ADA up there, and hopefully it's moving better. Something like that if the board so desires.
Yeah. As you know, and we spoke at the last session, traffic is universal across town. Everybody's responsible for it. Every business owner has to participate in the solution. So I don't look at this any different than, the Beth Israel with the women's. Yep.
So I would suggest to you at this point, if you are comfortable with the landscaping and what you've seen tonight, I gave you the smaller versions, that we could move forward to conditions.
I will open up,
Yep.
Let me open it to the public, thank you. If anybody from the public wishes to come forward, make any comments, ask any questions?
My name's Richard Wansel. I'm a resident of Braintree and frequently drive Pearl Street. And as the gentleman, Mr. McCamey, just stated, that this is a major choke point in the town. And it is due mainly to the entrance and exit of traffic going in and out of McDonald's. When you look just right across the street to Rite Aid, you don't have nearly the problem of people entering and exiting Rite Aid as you do at McDonald's. And one of the major reasons, I believe, is because they have an entrance on Washington Street, and then it comes out on that little side street there. And that cuts down an awful lot of the choking of traffic in that particular area. And I wonder if they couldn't possibly do the same thing with McDonald's, where that parking lot really is useless when you come right down to it. If they could do an entrance there and exit maybe on Pearl Street or vice versa, whichever way, it could considerably, I think, reduce traffic. That's all I have.
Is there a street parking spot there?
I just want to be clear, are you suggesting something in this area that they would come in and out of?
Yeah.
Be careful, be microphone, please.
I don't know how, having a curb cut that close on.
To the curb,
Yeah.
to the corner.
I mean, there's a right turn,
Yeah.
yeah. And this is an off-skewed intersection to begin, you kind of have to come over this way.
The entrance to Rite Aid is farther down. No, but I'm talking the one on Washington Street is farther down
Yeah,
there.
it's
So there's a
down-
distance from the corner to that. Having an exit right on the corner is gonna be very difficult. It could, yeah. I mean, it's a good idea, but it's so close to that corner. Well, let's see what we can do. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak? All right, so we're gonna be continuing this, moving to conditions.
Yeah, I think we're starting to back up in July, so, the next meeting is
August be okay?
August 20th.
August 20th, yes.
I think if we could, move towards conditions.
August would be going through conditions.
Yeah.
That works.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The chair will entertain a motion to continue this matter to go forward on conditions and we'll continue to August 20th.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So this matter will be continued to August 20th.
Is the public hearing closed?
No, we don't close it till the very end.
We leave it open so that there can be dialogue on the conditions.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Can you
The ne-
sign this, please?
Okay, you guys want to set up?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I may, we have Gary Gabriel here for his approval not required
Oh,
plan.
okay. When
And
we
he's
go for-
been waiting all night. I think that would only take a
Okay,
few
I
minutes.
would have done him right away, I'm
If
sorry.
Logan's okay with that.
Yeah.
He's mingled in there.
I'm sorry about that. I thought you were with them. Good morning, good evening, I apologize. Good evening. Listening to you. Thank you. Does the department want to make a comment before we start?
Yep, Connor worked on this, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On May 22nd, we received an application for approval not required from Mr. Gabriel. Under rules and regulations in the town of Braintree, we do have to act on this within 21 days. I have been working with Mr. Gabriel as well as Melissa on the design of the lots. We required Mr. Gabriel to perform some plan revisions. The updated plan is with the file currently. We had him add a zoning table to show the appropriate amount of frontage in lot areas, as well as the width and the depth. The 4 proposed lots on 102,914 square feet of land do meet the required 50 feet of frontage. and the 15,000 square feet. We do have a memo from Assistant Solicitor John Goldrosen. Usually when we receive applications now, we look at the proposed zoning bylaws and how they would be in harmony. With this type of application, the old zoning applies and is still effective.
Do you have any comments?
No, just to let you know that the middle lot falls under the old zoning bylaws, setbacks. And we did that so we could keep the existing structure at 54 Cachata. But the other two end lots we brought into the future setbacks, anticipating a change.
If I may add, Mr. Chairman, so Mr. Gabriel had some questions, and we talked to John Goldrosen about that. And the reason why some of the lots have the 75 feet of frontage based on the proposed bylaw is because of the protections for A&R lots, or lots shown on an A&R plan, and lots that are held in common, which these would be held in common until he sells the existing house and/or the house that he's going to pursue first, which would be the lot with 50 feet of frontage. And the 75, lots that have 75 feet of frontage and 7,500 square feet are there's protections for those. So Mr. Gabriel has put some of those lots into that category with the 75 feet of frontage because of the time limitations and the merger doctrine outlined in John's memo. So there are some that have the 50 and then some that have the 75, and he's configured them so that he doesn't lose those protections. They are 4 lots, they're very nice lots in a very nice neighborhood, and that if he chooses to not build on them right away, he will have the protections that are outlined in John Goldrosen's memo.
On the half-size sheet that we have of the dimensional requirements show the 75 as the minimum lot frontage. Is that a typo?
That is a typo, yes.
Is it currently 50?
It is 50. We had instructed the applicant to correct that. If you look at the revised plan with the file, it provides a better zoning table.
That's the one with the June 7th? Yep.
So on the revised table on that June 7th, proposed lot 3, it's showing minimum lot frontage at 75 feet. And lot 3 is shown as having, what was it, 18 to 57? At 18. 75. There's 18, here it's a curve. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Question on lot 1, in order to build a structure, are you gonna have to be, are we gonna require variances at all?
No, sir.
No. It's a weird shaped lot, that's why I'm asking. Sure. This one? Any questions? Do you have any questions?
So Melissa, that'll be the frontage and then essentially a driveway up to potential new dwelling?
Is your question about lot 1, Member McCamey?
Yeah, lot
Yes.
1, lot 2, yeah.
Yes. So lot 1 is the new zoning. Lot 2 is the old, and Lot 3 is also the new, which is the 75 feet of frontage and the 65% width. I'm not sure if we've talked in detail, but we're looking at the 65 and the 65% width requirement in front of the structure. And that's something that we might be adjusting as well. But for now, this is what we have. And this particular plan, we do talk about other things, but if they have the frontage, they're entitled to endorsement. But we look a little bit further, and we had talked and discussed with Gary the existing versus proposed, but in this particular case, if he meets the frontage requirement, he's entitled to endorsement, and we have the note on the plan that endorsement of this plan is not endorsing zoning compliance. So that if we decided to change that 65 or something like that, then that's something that we would have to address in the future with the applicant.
And these would all be single-family homes?
Yes, they would.
Okay. That's the plan. Got it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Downey? All right, how do we proceed on this one? It's an A&R.
So, as Connor had explained, and there's a few things that need to be tightened up on the plan. We talked to Mr. Gabriel about those today. And I've asked Connor to go through the plan again, just to make sure that everything matches up appropriately. And then we're going to have Mr. Gabriel sign an extension, because we need to file the decision by tomorrow. We only have 21 days under Chapter 41. So he will give us an extension, and when he brings back the Mylar, we will make sure all the revisions are made, and then we will call Member McCamey to sign the Mylar and the decision. So if the board is inclined to act this evening conditional, they could vote to endorse the plan, conditional on receiving the updated Mylar. If you'd like to wait to get that Mylar, you can. The items that need to be added are utilities in the street. Those don't necessarily impact the lot configuration. And I just want to review the table to make sure that all the numbers accurately reflect the dimensions of the proposed lots.
I'm going to leave that up to the board, see how they want to proceed. How do you want to proceed?
Sorry.
How do you want to proceed? We can either move it along now, or we can wait for the final drawings.
Wait for the final drawings.
Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to wait for the final drawings.
I would ask the applicant if they're, because they'll have to sign an extension until after
Do
July.
you sign an extension?
Yeah, if you feel more comfortable with it, that's fine.
Yeah, it might be better. All right, so he will sign an extension. Chair will entertain a motion to continue this for the final drawings.
So moved.
Is there a second?
To July, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I don't like this lot right here. All right. You're up. I don't have to read this into the record. That's okay.
Mr. Chairman, Logan Communications is here this evening with representatives for 236 240 Wood Road, just to kind of bring everyone up to speed. This matter has been continued a number of times. I've actually, in the front, there's the folder, is a list of all the meetings. And they have asked for continuances, and I know our town solicitor has been working with them. And so tonight we felt that they should come in and give you a kind of an update of what's been happening since the last time we met.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Thomas Moriarty. I represent PGG Outdoor LLC, DBA Logan Digital, in connection with its application for a special permit to construct and operate a monopole digital billboard on property located at 240 Wood Road. There are and have been outstanding two issues, essentially, with regard to the application. The first relates to the development agreement, the development and impact fee agreement with the mayor's office, and the second relates to concerns that have been expressed, close to a year ago by the fire department. My office has been in touch with the mayor's office in connection with the submission of and further modification of the proposed development of impact fee agreement, which is required pursuant to section 135-910-05. My understanding is that a red line version of that agreement has been provided to the mayor's office, and the mayor is taking that under advisement. As regards the communications of the concerns from the fire department, we were assured some time ago that from the fire department's perspective, at least as of that time, that there was nothing that could be done to address the concerns of the fire department relative to the hydrogen station. I know that there have been further communications with the fire department, with Deputy Chief Sawtell. Deputy Chief Sawtell, on May 29th, provided my office with 3 options to address their concerns. The first was relocation of the billboard so that it was not directly in line with the hydrogen station. The second was the reduction in the size of the billboard faces. And the third was the construction of a barrier or a canopy over the hydrogen station. From the applicant's perspective, the first 2 options were not feasible. The only feasible option was the construction of either a barrier or a canopy over. We went back to the landlord because we don't control the hydrogen station. My understanding is that the landlord has reached out to its engineer. Its engineer has come up with an idea, not yet a plan, but an idea to create a cage or some kind of reinforced steel barrier adjacent to the hydrogen station, which I can't say we expect because the fire department hasn't seen it, but we hope will address the fire department's concern in that regard. I have no indication from the landlord when we can expect the design to be provided, nor when we provide that design to the fire department, they will have time to review and report back. So right now, we're waiting for the mayor's office with regard to the impact fee agreement and waiting on a design proposal from the landlord's engineer.
Attorney Moriarty, you've been great as far as dealing with this all along. You've been very patient, and I know you have battled going forward, and I appreciate it. Somebody did email me probably a few months ago, I'm not sure who it was, addressing some issues. I think it was from out of state or something. Somebody did email me, I will let you know. One of the issues is we got to put this to rest, and we're not going to put it to rest today, but we got to put it to rest. It's been dragging on too long, and I know it's not your fault because you've been advocating for them tremendously. You've been doing a great job, but it hasn't come to a rest. So I know you're looking for another date. I don't think the board has an issue with another date, but I think we got to bring it to an end at that time.
Understood.
It's just one of those things that it's been going on for too long, and it's not. Again, I'm going to emphasize because I know your clients today. It's not from your work. You've been very patient. You've been very good bringing everything forward, but the board has to conclude something at some point.
Understood.
All right. So we'll entertain this. Board chair will entertain a motion to continue this next month, but let it be said, it has to be done at that time. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your indulgence. Ken Ingber. I am the trustee and the lawyer for 290 Wood Road, the immediate abutter. I had filed a public records request to find out what has been, or at least what documentation is available between October and May 22nd, which was the date I filed it, because There was a letter from November saying, well, we have these issues with the mayor's office and with the fire department. There was another letter in May also saying, still working with the fire department and the mayor's office. I did not get the response from the mayor's office yet, but the fire department has no documents during the entire time. It seemed to me that there was to some extent an express, to some extent an implied representation that they were in active discussion with the fire department, and at least the document request does not suggest that was the case. So that's one thing. I can't speak to the mayor's office. I did not get a response from them. The other thing I wanted to say is that there has been a little back and forth with the applicant, both at this forum and at the zoning board, where we thought that they needed a variance. They said they did not. They expressly stated that. And there was something very puzzling to me about that. We did a little investigation. It appears to me, and it's still a little opaque, but it seems to me that when the hydrogen station was approved, this goes back to, I think, 2015, I don't know what prevented them from building it, but they had a fire department permit for that, and they needed something, just a grading permit, I think, from the planning board. The original plan was for a modular item. It almost looks like a trailer. And that was the original approval. That's not what they built. What they built was something considerably larger. It's a number of items on a concrete pad. And according to our calculations, they are now over the the building cover or lot coverage. And they need, in order to do anything further, even just the diameter of the pole, they need a variance. And so I'm going to ask the planning board and staff to look into that, and I'm happy to provide some additional information on that. But that, I think, was where something seemed peculiar to me, and I still am not entirely clear on it, but it appears that what they built was not what was approved. I don't really have...
This is not the applicant, though, right?
This is not the applicant, okay. But it's on the same property. It's the hydrogen station. Yeah. But it has an implication. And I think I don't know whether something was overlooked, but the original approval was for something quite modest in size. What was actually built is something bigger. And if the calculations for why they think they don't need a variance are based on the old calculations, the old original, much more modest-sized project, I think that those numbers are inaccurate and should be reviewed, because I think there's a representation here that there's no variance required, and there are sections of the bylaw and parts of the special permit application that talk about, is this in harmony with the general bylaw, the more specific provisions. Given what I think I know about this, I don't think that's the case. I don't think they could say that. I think they need a variance, and I'd ask the planning board and staff to look carefully at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll look into it. So with the hydrant, the storage is built bigger than it was allowed?
I do remember, and maybe Melissa can answer this, we had a grading permit for the hydrant station. Now, as to what, there was no requirement for an as-built plan other than the grading. Isn't that my understanding?
That is correct, Christine. The hydrogen, we did a grading permit.
Yeah.
There was the guy here.
Oh, I remember that.
That company,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, bought, sold, whatever. Then there was a new guy that came on the scene, and I looked at it to make sure it wasn't in conflict with the grading permit.
Yeah, with the grading, exactly.
I believe they went through the fire department and the building department.
And licensing.
Yeah, I don't...
So that would have been a discussion with either the building department, fire department about the size, right?
Well, if the building department in issuing the permit, I mean, you have to review zoning compliance at that time. I wasn't involved in those discussions. I don't know if those took place with our former zoning planner.
It wouldn't be. It
But
wouldn't
I
be the
wasn't-
planning department.
I looked at it for grading.
Yeah, we were limited to the grade part.
So the best we can do is go back and look through the materials that we can have, but I guess in deference to the prior speaker, if there's a concern that the structure's been built bigger, that's really a building department issue if it wasn't followed by the plans. I mean, I think we'll look into what you suggested about the lot coverage and that, but I would also suggest that you need to have a discussion with the building department.
Nothing further?
Okay, that's no problem. And I know there's been ongoing discussions, and, but we gotta bring it to an end at a certain point. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Chair will take a motion to continue this.
Can we get on July?
I would suggest August. I mean, is there a tremendous hurry? We've been a year here. So we're pretty full, and we have that evening, the zoning, if it's gonna.
All right.
So I'd suggest August 20th at 7:15.
Motion to continue this matter till the August 20th, is it, meeting?
Is there a second?
20th?
Yes, Member Downey.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
No, one quick thing. I know, Louise, we want to remind you that we want to know your RSVPs for the MAR companies, so.
Yeah, I got an email about that. When is that?
Tomorrow.
It's tomorrow?
Oh, is it?
Is it tomorrow?
Is it tomorrow?
It's Friday.
Hey. What time Friday?
Connor, do you know what time?
I'll probably be there late. I'll get there around 11:30, 11:45. All right, so, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Can we have discussion? I'm just kidding. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.